Ladies and gents, welcome back to another Engineers podcast. Today I'm joined by Bryan Clark. Bryan's VP of Product at Neom. And Neom are a database platform who are offering a serverless and cloud native approach to working with Postgres. We've got a really interesting pod that's going to be uncovering a number of different challenges for Neom across performance, scaling databases, and really they're on a mission to make a seamless approach for developers and creating a great DevX. So we're going to be getting into some of the details on that today. Bryan, big thanks from Vancouver. How's it going?
Great. Yeah, great. Doing really well here. Really excited to chat with you all. I've enjoyed the different podcasts that you had, the different guests. So definitely honored to be here.
You're a gent. We always start with a bit of an intro into you before you give us the elevator pitch on Neom. So tell us a little bit about Bryan and your background.
Cool. Yeah. I've had a cool career. I know when anyone looks at my LinkedIn, they're like, "Oh wow, look at this stuff." It has been really fun. I started as a computer scientist. I got my master's in computer science. I actually did a patch to the Linux kernel as part of my master's, and then I haven't worked as a programmer like a day into my life, working career capacity. Immediately, I went to work for Red Hat. This is early days of Red Hat, where I think there were only 200 people or so in the company when I joined. I was working as a designer. So I had done a bunch of, at the time, human-computer interaction studies. I built my own course at the university that I went to because they didn't have anything there. And so I actually taught human-computer interaction to other students after building the course with a number of really awesome professors. From there, I did interaction design at Red Hat. I worked on a bunch of different projects and things within there. I kind of realized that the Red Hat audience was this enterprise market that I didn't, as a designer, didn't really like as much. The buyer is different than the user. And so I wanted to be in a place that where the buyers would walk away if we built a bad product. And so I was contacted by someone from Mozilla, and they needed a head of design for their Thunderbird product. And Thunderbird is an email editor for Mozilla. So I went off and did that. We did a lot of really cool things on Thunderbird, developed these summaries for when you first click on a folder and things like that. And found a lot of ways to be offer interesting UI in clever ways, because when you're in someone's productivity app in a way that they know the keyboard shortcuts and the ways to really move around it, you have to be really cautious about all the interactions that maybe you're not aware of and how you use it. Really fun time there. Eventually we got folded back into the rest of Mozilla, and I started working on Firefox and some other Mozilla Labs projects. And that's when I moved from design to product management. For me, working as a designer was really fun, but I found in engineering-led organizations, oftentimes people would have already made a bunch of choices about how things work. Engineers would kind of build a demo or a project, and then that would turn into a product or feature, and then they bring on design and say, "Hey, help us make this really user-friendly." And at that point, I was like, "Well, you've made so many choices. It might actually be really hard to make this." It's kind of like lipstick on a pig at that moment, right? So in my take, moving into product management was a way for me to kind of, step back and say, I can get in early and help make the choices at the right time. I can bring in design because I understand designers and what they want to see. And I, worked as a computer, I have my degree in computer science. I know what engineers are kind of thinking about. So not so much, I don't like to say compromise, but try and create better balance, because that's what you're trying to really achieve there.
I love how well articulated that is. And actually, I'm seeing this a lot at the moment. I think the product engineer has been
Hmm.
in the industry now for a couple of years, but design engineering is this new term, new phrase that
Hmm.
people quite like to use. I think a lot of them mean the same things, but being really user led as a team and building stuff that's right from the user and almost reverse engineering it. I'm talking about that a lot in the podcast
Hmm.
at the moment, and how teams are almost shaping their mindset to be this way orientated. So it's quite interesting that that's been an inner philosophy for you then,
Yeah.
um, since coming out of school.
Yeah. Yeah. And really, those teams move fast. I think that's the thing that's really
Yeah.
interesting about those design engineers is being able to have that kind of like gut reaction, right? And be able to move quickly on like what is a good product experience. That's what really makes those teams move fast.
Yeah, I love it. Tell us a little bit about Neon then, and tell us about your role at Neon.
Yeah, so like I said, on the VP of product at Neon, so I manage the product team and the design team at Neon, and really trying to like set the overall kind of direction, vision. Neon sees itself as a like a Postgres developer tool, right? We've really done a lot to make Postgres more approachable and integrate into developers' workflows. And so, yeah, a lot of what I do is really like work with customers to understand what they need. We have a lot of technology based on this platform that we've built, and we're trying to make sure we translate that into how customers like use databases. Because I think over many years, people have actually like moved away from really like testing and integrating databases into their workflow environments because they haven't fit like when you look at the landscape of JavaScript applications out there and hosting solutions, there's like preview environments and instant deploys, and you just have such better confidence in how you work in those tooling environments. But anyone I talk to who like use it like as an application developer and using a database, immediately the confidence drop. They're just like, I don't know, these migrations are erroring and all these problems and things like that. And yeah, that's what I talk to people about all the time, and that's kind of our end vision. Is like it should be as easy as JavaScript development to like work with a database, right?
Love that. And I want to talk about not necessarily some cons, but pros are important, right? We should be talking about why you would want to use Neon. So really keen to get into why you would use Neon to enhance your Postgres experience, if you like, especially in cloud native applications. I think that would be really useful to uncover.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, a couple of things. Neon does serverless, like HTTP access. So most other serverless systems, like if you're using a Lambda or something else like from Vercel or like Cloudflare Workers, those things all, if you want to access the database, you can't access it in the normal application way, which is like spin up a TCP connection to the database from like a backend and things like that. Like databases are designed for that access, but it's not designed for a serverless world. So yeah, Neon built HTTP layer. So there's a serverless package. You can access your database from straight HTTP calls, and you can actually send SQL queries directly over HTTP and get that data back in JSON. What it means is you don't waste time in your like serverless environment, right? Like you're charged for the time that's run. Often they like will time out after a certain amount of time. And if you try to spin up a regular database connection, you'll spend a good portion of that time trying to connect to your database before you even do anything. So yeah, like one thing there, yeah, it's like serverless HTTP access means you can instantly connect to the database and get a query and a response back. And then the other part I think that's really important is that we do auto scaling and auto suspend. So auto scaling means you can just set like a bandwidth for your database compute and say, anywhere from 1 CPU to like 8 CPU, just scale as needed. And we take care of the rest. Like you don't have to think about like if you're releasing something tomorrow and it's going to be like a hit on Hacker News or X or something like that. that like you have to like then worry about, like, is my database going to manage this? Because in the traditional database method, what you would do is like set your database to 10 CPU, and like in an AWS RDS system, you have to like maybe restart it in order to get it up to 10 CPU, and now you're going to pay that amount for every moment, and then just kind of wasting dollars until that passes, and then maybe you'd have to reconfigure it down to a lower system. But developers shouldn't have to think about that. Like serverless should mean like it's just like that part is taken care of, and so the auto scaling we have now is like the first step towards like really not having to think about this stuff at all. And then the auto suspend part is like often you're spinning up like 2/3 of a customer's database spend is often like staging and development environments. And I just had a customer the other day tell me how like 21 hours out of the day are spent just idle on a developer instance, right? If you think about it, it's like developers are there working for like maybe 3 hours during the day on this one instance, but it's just charging you compute for the entire day. Like we manage that with auto suspend, right? Like the database just goes to sleep. As soon as you try to reconnect to it, we just wake it up and it's available. And all that happens in like 500 milliseconds. So like you don't even have to like pay like a penalty like you would think that like
Customers must love that, surely.
Yeah. No, yeah. It speaks to the finance people, right? When it's like you see the dollars saved and like how much time was actually wasted. And because it spins up so quickly, like the developers don't care at all. Like as soon as you go to reconnect or your preview environment is like running again, the database wakes up and it's right there. So yeah, really taking like the edge off of what could be like it's a difficult to manage set of systems.
Love that. You obviously come from a design background, a product background. I'm really keen to get into the developer experience and understand how intentional you've been at Neom to create a really good developer experience and the benefits that engineers are likely to see from this developer experience.
Yeah. I think the main thing, so Neon ultimately is this like different file system for Postgres, right? Like the Postgres we run is the same as everything else. Like we just today released 17. Like it was launched today for Postgres 17, and we came out with it today. And we worked pretty hard to kind of make that happen. But yeah, like this what is like a fancy file system, and it's all open source if people want to take a look. It allowed us to create easy preview environments. So we have what we call database branching, and that's basically just to allow you to have a preview environment. So if you're using like Vercel or like Render or any of the like kind of cloud native systems out there that have preview environments, it changes. It takes like a copy of your code and puts all the new code in one spot, and you can now like click around and use it. But if your database isn't also over there, it's actually really hard to test that environment. So the Neon system creates a branch of your database. It kind of takes a copy of whatever was the database itself, creates that separate copy. And we don't actually even, we don't really copy the data. We use this technology called copy on write, which means we kind of just point to the old data. And if you make changes, then we'll write out those changes and save them. But otherwise, you don't have to like pay for like whole duplicates. If you're paying for 20 gigs of storage, every time someone creates a preview branch, you don't want to have to pay another 20 gigs for like the 8 different preview branches your developers are using. So that part I think is like, that's part of the design philosophy, and we're like continuing to iterate. We just actually had a kind of a conversation on Twitter this past weekend about this database branching, right? Because like when you start to use it, people immediately, like developers are like, I love this branching. Like I can't survive without it. Once you experience and start using them, you realize like, yeah, you can run all your migrations and you can have this full test environment that looks exactly like prod. And then when you like merge your pull requests, everything like merges into prod in a very like in a confident way. You understand that like I made the changes here, and now it's very likely to work as I merge into prod. And we were talking about how we're advancing this, right? Because when I talk about this with a certain set of developers, they'll say like, well, there's certain data in prod that I can't have people access to, right? Like people's names or birthdays or like whatever you might be storing in your production database. And we're like, yeah, that's exactly where we're advancing, right? It's like for a whole set of customers, just like branching directly from production works just great. And like we're kind of refining how we do that with like GitHub Actions and these integrations to make it super simple. And the next phase is really like we're going to start branching with anonymization. So we're going to take that production branch and you'll be able to like branch it off into an environment in this preview environment. And you can kind of declare, I don't want this column, or I don't want this table included, or I want you to change all the names to be different names, and use a bunch of functions to kind of alter the data, but then still have this preview environment flow because, like everyone is like, this is the best way to run tests and to have a successful environment. But, sometimes there's some data you don't want included. And we're like, that's the next iteration, right? Like we're going to keep moving forward on this to make sure that people have this great test and developer experience, and then also protect against data that like you don't want leaked.
Yeah, exactly. Talk to us a little bit about how Neon have challenged some of the first principles of databases, what they've improved and successfully changed, and also what have been the challenges.
Yeah, I mean the kind of core offering of Neon is this separation of storage and compute, and so that I think is like one of the things where, when I tell people about like the Neon architecture, it's the same Postgres that you would get anywhere you download, right? But in Postgres and the way we run it, when it tries to write to the file system, there's no actual file system there. Like what happens is like Postgres has this thing called WAL. It stands for write ahead log. And it's all the changes that have happened in Postgres. And it's supposed to be saved somewhere before it writes to disk as a way to like maintain this like atomic transactions and durability of changes. And so Neon actually just like consumes this stuff on one side. And it means that we save the entire history of databases. So when you use the Neon's like point in time recovery, you can actually like rewind just like you can in Git. Like if you're in a Git repository and you're like, oh, I want to go back to this commit, or like you can rewind right back to any change in the history of your code. If you have a Neon database, you can actually rewind to any change you want, as long as it's within this like history period. And that stuff is very different than normal. Normally databases, they'll save the current state, and then you'll have a backup or something like that. Maybe those backups are like weekly. And so you could like go grab last week's change, like whatever the database looked like at that day that the thing was captured. But being able to like go back in time is really interesting in this way. And we have some cool demos of like a kind of a Git bisect system where, like you run a query and then it tries to find that version of the database among all the different versions of the database until it can finally like be like, here's where that query is true, right? And then so you can restore that. I want to go play with that branch of the database and go see what happened.
This specific rewind scenario, do you think this is our thinking that has modernized and what we want to do with systems nowadays, or is this a computational modernization where we can just do this now because of the innovation in technology, or is it a mindset thing, like I said initially?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's majority mindset. I think like it's true that like compute and storage have to be cheap for you to want to do this. Like Postgres, when it was originally written, was like mostly targeting spinning disks and like people running on premise and things like that. And so a lot of that, we've had to challenge. Like the patches that we have to Postgres really are about the file system and being able to access something that's like more network based. So that's like kind of the majority of the challenge there. Really, like database systems have data and then also this schema structure. So they're different than code. Like in code, when you're reverting, you're trying to get like, you can go back to the previous state and then roll that out. And then the entire application kind of gets reset and it's stateless, right? But like databases contain all the state. And so we think about it slightly differently in that like sometimes you need to and not even roll back, because like, if you've ever had a production database mistake go, or something go wrong, it's a terrible feeling. I actually had this. I didn't do this, but when I was at GitHub, I was there.
I love
And,
this.
like,
I didn't do this.
yeah, someone. I mean, I can empathize with it, right? But like, someone had the development database and the production database in two different terminal windows, and they ran drop on a table that was in the wrong one, and you can tell as soon as you run drop in the production database that it takes a little bit longer. Like, there's like a pause because there's a whole lot more data there than there is in your development environment. And then, alarm bells start going off and people start getting paged. And those moments are awful. And you can't roll back databases in the same way, because like new data is coming into all sorts of different places. So you always have to do this roll forward. But yeah, that's why like our kind of revert system allows you to be like, let's go back to right before that data was dropped. We'll create a new database, and then we'll try to do the surgery to bring things back to where they were. And even that, when I look at it, is like, it's too complicated. Like, you need an undo button. Like the developer just needs to be able to be like, that thing I did was wrong. Because even to this day, things like tools like I think Prisma still, if you try to rename a column, they actually like drop the column and then they create a new column with the name that you wanted, which isn't what you want, because like when you drop the column, you lose all the data.
Yeah.
So there's things where this comes up and you want to fix. So that's we're trying to reimagine how you get back to where you're supposed to be, but it wouldn't be possible if compute and like S3 storage was so easily available and cheap.
Makes total sense. I'm really keen to understand the difference in your mind between working on building a B2C product, working on building a B2B2C product. And you've got some actually really nice experience from Mozilla and into Neon now. So it'd be great to understand from your perspective what you think some key differences are.
Yeah. When I was at Mozilla, and Firefox is B2C, right? Like business to consumer. So I think I always thought it was really fascinating how the marketing team would try adjustments on like the download button, right? Like all these A/B tests to say like, free, or and then all of a sudden the downloads go up, and then they would run ads, right, on like Google Ads and other platforms, and just like create a different funnel environment. But like, I mean, at GitHub and at Neon now, when you're B2B/C, we are selling to developers, because they're the ones who really buy DevTools products. Like they have to have tried it and understand it and want it, and then they kind of sell it into their organization. Like someone will say, I use Neon and it was great, and I think we should use it in our company. And that's how the purchasing process works. But like ads don't work, right? Like you can't use Google Ads to reach developers. They scroll right past them. They don't see them. They even, I think, are adverse to them, and most of the time they're running ad block. So like in any time I've been on a developer tools platform, we all know that everyone's running ad block, so you can't even track like motion if the ad block's working. It creates a very different environment, and it's maybe slightly unfortunate, because like for a product person, right, like it would be great to have the same tools that you have in like an ad platform. Like they have attribution and campaigns and all these things to help you understand like the things that you're trying. But when you don't have access to when none of that's going to work, Neon has a free tier, and that's what we use. Is basically what you would like think of as like, it's not ads, but it's how we can have anyone try the platform and hopefully they'll understand it. But you have to build that same infrastructure in a way to then be like, what are people doing on the free tier? Did they like use these features? Like I have a metric about like how many people branch within a certain period of time of signing up for Neon, because I want developers to understand preview environments as quickly as possible, because it's like one of the like key features of Neon. And so if they don't do that, then like our sign up process isn't doing its job. But like you could in the B2C world, I could imagine just running ads about like preview environments and branching and all these different variations to try and bring more people in. And it just none of that's possible. Like developers, they really trust other people's opinions. Like they do research, they want to try things, and so yeah, your options they're limited. And I think it's a fun challenge. I think that's what I like. But also like I think it means your tools have to be really excellent, right? Like you just developers are discerning about the tools that they want because they spend a lot of time with them, and it's like it really improves their productivity the better the tools are, and so yeah, like that's why design is critical, right? Like the simpler things are, simple yet powerful, that really matters. So we focus a lot on that, right? Like we have a really strong design team. We focus on like improving design with every release. And just trying to help developers, kind of understand the project and use it as best they can.
Yeah. It's interesting from a marketing and almost like business sense, it's a different mindset. The design, the product, and no doubt the engineering efforts, they've got to be slightly different. I'd say more so probably on the design and product side, really, and the usability aspect of your B2B branch or B2C branch. They've got to be totally different. It's not a different user, but people use it for different purposes, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is, and I think you do see it's like so we offered a business tier recently, and I think it starts somewhere around like $700 a month. You get a bunch more stuff all built in, and a very common concern I think among some people inside Neon were like, who's going to sign up for a $700 a month kind of tier? And as soon as we launched it, there were instantly like people from the free tier upgraded to the business tier immediately, right? Just like there's different kinds of users and classes of users, and some people when they look at a B2B app and it actually looks more B2C, like if you just don't have a higher tier, they think like, well, you're not ready for my class of product or application, right? And so I talk to other product managers about this a lot, how like, just put like a larger tier. Like I should have an even larger tier now that just is like, here is $3,000 a month. And if people sign up for it and it includes all the things that they would expect from what you would roughly pay around that for like maybe RDS or Heroku, then yeah, that customer, it's a different class of customer. But it all happens kind of PLG. That's the other part I think that's interesting about developer tools is nobody wants to talk to us. None of the buyers are interested in like a sales conversation. For the most part, they'd rather be like, no, I'm already spending $3,000 a month for my database now. I want something where I can get that from Neon and just give it to me without talking to me. Like I don't want to like have to negotiate with a salesperson at all. We have like a 2-person sales team at Neon, right? Like they're really just for anyone who's like, I do want to talk to Neon. Some people like really do, and they have questions, and yeah, we will sign up and have a conversation with anyone who wants to talk to us about the products. But majority, everyone is PLG, and a lot of customers I can't even connect with. Like they're just like, please stop emailing me. I never want to speak to you. The product's great.
Yeah, no, I bet. It's interesting. I was having that conversation the other day with someone about product-led growth over marketing-led growth and the sustainability in PLG. And it makes a lot of sense now thinking about your buyers' habits and the value they see in your product. That comes down to how you design it, how you build it, the usability, easeability for people, and the value that you're going to give them, right?
Yeah.
So good for you guys.
I have a good example of this where databases, the great thing about database products, if you're building one, is that they're very sticky, right? Like if your service is stable, and Postgres is very stable. So if you just run that for people on some compute somewhere and someone like uses your service, it's very hard to move off of because moving your production database around a tricky and difficult thing to do. And so Neon, we started building out this use case of essentially attaching on to production databases. So offering like a development database environment. And we had a number of customers who were like, yeah, I'm running, Postgres RDS in production, and it's fine. Like it's not great, but like our system is steady. But like the development is expensive. Like we have to like duplicate the storage, and it's really slow to move. And so, we've been working on this kind of use case where we're pulling their data from production into Neon. And then once we have the database there, they're using the branching for like this fast development workflow. So they kind of still have this like slow and old Postgres database running elsewhere, but this totally new modern development system. And that I think was like, just recognizing that we had customers coming in through this like PLG workflow. And sometimes some of them would talk with us and say, I don't know, I'm not ready to move my production database over, but I really want this like alternate system that you have for branching and being able, like, I want to develop fast. And so, you have to be able to kind of recognize those things and say, okay, now how can we package up this use case in a way that makes sense? I still don't have a good way of talking. I don't know what the name is. Like, I don't know how to name the product yet. Like, I tried many things of like Neon Dev Flow. Like, I'm not there yet, but hopefully I'll find something that rings with people of like, oh yeah, I want my development to happen in Neon, but I'm going to leave my prod where it is for now.
I love it.
Yeah, and then
you'll get there.
How do you get customers onto that thing? Like, how do you get them to like say, yeah, I want to buy this for that? Because in these conversations, I think it was 2/3 of database spend is all in that like development tests. So like you can really reduce your costs, and then you also get something much faster. So trying to work both those things in a PLG way, and again without ads or anything, right? It's like we have like just content where we talk about these things, and then the onboarding flow to try and show customers.
Yeah, great. Okay. Talk to us a little bit about the growth and how the product might grow, how the team might grow as well. So an opportunity to maybe talk about what you're looking to introduce over the next 6 to 12 months of what you can share with us, and how the team and the business might grow.
Yeah. I mean, Neon has been doing super well since the start. I think the serverless Postgres really resonates with people. So in terms of like growth and number of databases, things are going really well. And I think the things you'll see from Neon coming forward, one of which I kind of talked about, we have this branch anonymization work that we're doing that's going to be able to say, basically you'll, so if you're using like Drizzle or some kind of like ORM to define your schema, we're going to give you a way to kind of say, let's say like this column is a first name and this column is a last name. And I want those to be anonymized so that when my developers branch, they don't get the real names. So that piece we are working on now. There's an extension called PG Anon, which we've been kind of playing with to see if this is going to do the right thing for us. But what we want ideally is like you can have production running. Your developers don't have access to that because it has like PII or sensitive data. And then you'll be able to branch from it directly and get this like anonymized version that you can then use for all your development needs. Because like we think that branching workflow and being able to use the production schema and get like a snapshot of it that's as close to what production's doing creates the best kind of test environment for you to have real confidence in your changes. So we really want to keep iterating on that. We also are, we're working on a bunch of onboarding, like I said, with like migrations being really difficult and the way customers migrate. So we're kind of paying attention to exactly what customers do. Sometimes when you're like looking at a new database service, you want to pull a copy of your data into that service, run some performance tests, and kind of see that it stacks up to your expectations. And then you might want to do like a very low downtime migration. So, we've been doing this with customers in kind of like a non-scalable way, right? Like in products, you always want to start with things that don't scale and then figure out like as that's working and customers see the value, how do we scale that? So yeah, like next year, we should have like a one-click migration. So it'll be kind of like, bring my data over to Neon, and then you can run tests and go figure out if it's the right thing for you. In that moment, you could also be like, okay, I just want to use Neon for development right now. Let's just like set up a regular schedule to pull data over. And then, you can also make a choice later. It's like, now I'm ready to migrate the whole production database, and just, kind of click, done. You exited RDS and now you're running at full steam. And, to do all that, we need like more compute and more storage. We're not at like an infinite storage right now, but that is the aim. And yeah, like the further out vision is like really to like help reduce the number of like knobs and buttons that people have to tune in a database, because when you're an application developer, a database is a necessity, but like I see it more like S3 is like the ultimate serverless product. Like you don't really configure it, you just like send a ton of data over to it, you pull data back. It charges you like what I think is a pretty reasonable rate for storage and like the transfer, and like R2 fits in here as well, like these kind of like massive storage systems. And I think databases should move in that direction. Like they can't fully move in that way. Like it's not a, in next quarter we'll be able to do this, but like down the road, databases should be much more like that, like very low config. You shouldn't have to really choose a lot of compute. It's really, you're trying to manage your billing and stuff like that. You don't want to pay too much. But like if you use a bunch of compute as a spike one day because your service hit the front page of Hacker News, that would be fine, assuming like your bill didn't like keep going that way for the rest of the month, right? Like you want to be able to make those choices and have the system really help you, because ultimately you'd rather survive, but you just don't want to also go broke. And that's the part with serverless that like you really need to manage.
Mission to make yourselves affordable. Well, thinking about accessibility, affordability, and everything that falls under that. And, touching on the accessibility point, one-click migrations, easy. Like if you can make this stuff easy to use your product, more people will buy it, recommend it. And that's like what we were talking about with PLG.
Yeah, exactly.
Love that. Where's the team growth coming from, if there is team growth coming over the next 6-12 months?
Yeah, we are. We're hiring on a bunch of fronts. So I know we're hiring engineering right now. We're going to continue to do that into next quarter. We are landing Neon in Azure. So we announced that a while back. So we'll have both AWS and Azure. And so we've been hiring people who basically know Azure, because like to start, our team was mostly AWS people and things like that. And yeah, like we're always looking for really good people. So Neon's policy is a lot like I always keep, right? That's like, if you're interested in working at Neon and like you're really great in your field, there doesn't need to be a job posting open, right? There's always like just apply, and we're always looking for like the best people who can move fast, and like you said, like these like design engineers and people who have great developer taste. That's like the thing I find is like that part is really hard to train. Like we can coach people in almost any other aspect, but like getting like really good developer taste and having a great opinion on how development should be, we're always looking for people like that.
Love that. For people listening, career sites below. Bryan's LinkedIn profile is going to be below as well, so you can check out Bryan's background. I want to say a massive thanks for coming to join us. Inspiring to see your journey. You've been at some phenomenal businesses, and obviously landing at Red Hat and making your career to where you are today. It's an incredible achievement. So good for you. What you guys are building at Neon is incredible, seemingly. So keep on doing what you're doing. And, for people listening, likes, shares, subscribership, and all of that good stuff is what ticks our little ecosystem round. That's our own PLG. So keep doing that. And Bryan, a massive thanks for coming to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Elliot. This is a long time coming. I don't know when we first started talking to now, but it's been really great. I really appreciate it.
It's been a long time coming, that's for absolute sure. A massive thank you. You've been a legend, and best of luck to you guys at Neon.
Cheers, thanks.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Engineers is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found at Engineers.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.